Chapter 6: Magnetic Force, Animal Magnetism. The saga of Franz Anton Mesmer was exceedingly dramatic and extended far beyond his death. It resulted in a veritable age of mesmerism, the vitality of which took on international interest and fascination that endured for about 140 years. Indeed, such was the strength of mesmerism that it came to constitute one of the first international movements of any kind, and its international vivacity was such that the anti-energetic sentiments in the mainstream modern sciences did not succeed in deconstructing it until about 1920. Even then, mesmerism left three long shadows of itself: the first in the guise of hypnotism, the second in the guise of psychical research, the third in the guise of the energetic mysteries of sexual energies. Franz Anton Mesmer, 1733 to 1815, was born in Switzerland at Weil, near the city and lake of Constance. By all accounts, he was of copious intelligence and a somewhat high-minded individual, whose thinking was completely in keeping with his times. Modern historians seldom consider him as a person within his times, but assess him according to the modern standards as they later developed. And by those later standards, Mesmer's activities consisted of one strange folly after another. He was educated in Vienna, where he took a degree in medicine. As his doctoral thesis, he produced a study entitled "The Planetarium Influxu," the influence of the planets on the human body. In modern contexts, this document is mistakenly condemned as Mesmer's astrological thesis. But in his times, and as we have already seen, the thesis examined magnetic, energetic influences that were thought to be universal in nature. Mesmer observed that the action of the magnetic influences consisted of alternating effects which may be considered as fluxes and refluxes of sympathetic systems. The effects manifest in the human body with properties analogous to the magnet. There are poles diverse and opposed, which can be communicated, changed, destroyed, and reinforced. The phenomenon of inclination is also observable. In later summarizing his thesis, he indicated that the property of animal, read animate, body, which renders it susceptible to the magnetic influence of the celestial bodies, and to the reciprocal action of the environing local environmental ones. I felt prompted to name from analogy to the magnet animal magnetism. As discussed in Chapter 4, please bear in mind that the context Mesmer was using referred not to animal magnetism, but to animating magnetism, and that during his times this usage was understood and accepted. Medical uses of magnetic plates. Mesmer was one of the many physicians who were exploring cures and healings via magnets. Mesmer apparently innovated, designed, and constructed his own version of such plates by applying his magnetized plates to a patient's limbs. He effected the first cures in about 1773. Unfortunately, what these plates consisted of has been lost, but probably analogous to them are various magnetic plates designed in Japan during the 1980s, which also produced cures. Further, the application of weak electromagnetic currents to bone fractures and ulcerous infections has been confirmed as speeding up healings and cures. See, for example, The Body Electric by Robert O. Becker, M.D., and Gary Selden, 1985. Mesmer came to special public attention because of a bitter and quite public controversy involving the invention of his plates. The priority of this invention was claimed by a Jesuit priest having the curious name of Maximilian Hell, a professor of astronomy/astrology at the University of Vienna. Mesmer won this claim, but was quickly involved in another controversy involving his cure of a blind girl. At some point between 1770 and 1775, Mesmer was among the many physicians and intellectuals who witnessed a number of cures effected by the strokings of J. Gassner without the use of magnets. Because of this, Mesmer correctly conceptualized that the human body possessed a magnetic field and that such fields could affect each other. Mesmer thereafter disposed of the magnets. For a fresh start, he abandoned Vienna as well and traveled to Paris, the City of Lights. Magnetic vats. Installed in Paris, he quickly developed novel techniques and equipment to effect cures. The exact nature and materials of the new equipment have again been lost to posterity, but not their impact, resulting scandals, and the extraordinary controversies that came to surround the very name of Mesmer. The equipment Mesmer designed consisted of several versions of large circular vat and French bequet filled with certain substances that apparently consisted of mixtures of various metals and shards of glass. Whatever the substances consisted of, they served to collect animating magnetism and transfer it and its sympathetic qualities to the sympathetic systems of the patients. The theory was that the certain substances collected and amplified the magnetic forces, and then, via handheld connectors, the forces were transferred to and resaturated the sympathetic systems inherent in the bodies of the patients. The method utilized to effect the transfer tended to boggle the imagination. The patients sat around in the backwaits in communal groups, each holding a metal or glass rod or a mere copper wire or string of thread, the other end of which was pushed into the substances in the vats. Mesmer erected several circular vats, each about a foot high, and experimented with a number of handheld connectors that served as conduits for the animating or reanimating magnetisms. There is no doubt that some cures were attained for ailments strictly physical in their cause, but even more cures were obtained regarding illnesses mental, psychosomatic in origin. Even Mesmer himself indicated that his techniques better dealt with what we today would refer to as conditions of psychosomatic in origin. Indeed, as a physician, Mesmer usually and correctly first sent physically ill patients to other doctors and otherwise accepted them only if physical remedies were of no effect. The energetic phenomena of the vats. Although the exact material constituents of the circular communal vats have been lost, the nature of the energetic phenomena experienced by the patients has not. As described, usually too briefly in most sources, these phenomena consisted of violent convulsions, cries, uncontrollable laughter, and various physical symptoms, followed by lethargy, after which the cures became apparent. What was cured and why it was has always remained an historical mystery, confounded by the expressions of awe, shock, and professional hysteria. On the face of the brief descriptions of the phenomena, it is difficult to know what was actually meant by violent convulsion. Later scientific criteria established convulsions as consisted of quite serious, and very painful involuntary contractions of the muscles regarding which the nervous system goes haywire, sometimes resulting in coma. It is also difficult to understand what was meant by various physical symptoms or even what was meant by cries and laughter. However, the sum of all these phenomena quite clearly falls into the category of catharsis of the ecstatic or ecstasy type, and obvious clues regarding this can be comprehended not by studying the phenomena but by examining who attended upon the vats. Many had no visible ills to cure. If this particular issue is examined, it will be seen that they came just for the thrill of experiencing the animating magnetic energies. The social background regarding the vats. Mesmer's reputation preceded him to Paris, and once installed there he acquired numerous supports. Principal among these at first was Charles de Elson, medical advisor to the Count d'Artois, brother to King Louis XVI. This was high patronage indeed. In September of 1780, de Elson asked the Faculty of Medicine to confirm Mesmer's ideas and techniques, a request that was rejected. Nonetheless, public enthusiasm and high patronage support had grown to impressive heights. In March 1781, on behalf of the king, no less a patron than the powerful minister de Maurepas offered Mesmer 20,000 livres, a significant amount, and a further annuity of 10,000 if he established a school and agreed to divulge the secret of his treatments. Mesmer at first refused, but later accepted a subscription of 340,000 livres for lectures to pupils. With this financial arrangement, Mesmer increased his vat facilities and surrounded them with rather impressive environments. These consisted of large rooms noted for the opulence of their furnishings, with enormous reflecting mirrors everywhere, the whole being dimly lit. Mesmer and his vat facilities were mobbed with applicants, among them vast numbers of the aristocracy and royalty. Many memoirs of various members of the aristocracy established that the mob included even Queen Marie Antoinette and the whole of her court. Spontaneous sexual orgasm at the vats. It is from some of these memoirs, not consulted by biographers of Mesmer, that a complete picture of the convulsive catharsis is revealed. There is no doubt at all that those holding the connectors often experienced an aspect of ecstatic catharsis known from ancient times, some kind of involuntary auto-orgasm in females and auto-ejaculatory release in males. Hence, the connection among the convulsions, cries, laughter, and the subsequent lethargy tend to fall into place, since these taken all together are recognizable and familiar constituents of sexual orgasm. And, indeed, if the convulsions had been painful, it is quite unlikely that the applications to sit at the vats would have been any more numerous than the cases of those willing to try anything and everything to ameliorate their ills. Mesmeric trances. Although known from the ancient times, ecstatic catharsis engendered dramatic and empowering shifts and levels of consciousness of the kind we today would refer to as heightened altered states, and during which many kinds of so-called paranormal trance phenomena were experienced. Such phenomena also came to light within many of Mesmer's vat participants, but a perpetual confusion has settled in regarding this matter, in that mesmeric trance phenomena had been historically confused with hypnosis. Hypnotism can easily be confused as an extension of mesmeric trance, since it, too, is a type of altered state. But in actual historical fact, hypnotism as such was not identified until about 1842 by the English surgeon James Braid, 1795 to 1860. Braid first termed the phenomenon as neurohypnotism, a phenomenon that also sometimes aroused involuntary sexualizing activity. Types of hypnotism, however, had earlier been identified in ancient Persia and India, and with probably even more ancient antecedents in Egypt. In any event, Mesmer's stay in Paris was cut short, leaving mesmeric trance phenomena to be investigated by later of his followers. Mesmer's expulsion from France. Although a great deal has been written about Mesmer's expulsion from France, it remains unclear as to why and how the expulsion was instigated. The official story holds that in 1784 the French government charged the Faculty of Medicine, the Royal Society of Medicine, and the Academy of Sciences to examine animal magnetism. Considering the high patronage of Mesmer, which included the king, many of his ministers, and significant personages of the court, it is difficult to determine exactly what happened. In any event, and whatever the real reasons, 9 commissioners were convened under the presidency of no less than Benjamin Franklin, then in Paris, and included the astronomer Jean-Sylvain Bailly and the chemist J.K. Lavater, both esteemed scientists of the time. The commissioners were restricted to the activity of attempting to establish evidence of a new physical force that was claimed as the agent of the cures. But it is clear that the actual target was Mesmer himself, and that the actual purpose was to get rid of him. The commission produced 2 known reports, but between them the consensus among the commissioners is quite garbled. Franklin, for example, recommended further examination of the issue. But King Louis XVI, not known for much in the way of certitude, was somehow stampeded to order Mesmer's expulsion from France, and which was quickly effected. Mesmer removed himself to Meersburg, Switzerland, where he lived a quiet, unobtrusive life till he died in March 1815. How it was that Mesmer, a veritable supernova, thereafter consented to obscurity remains something of a mystery. The continuing saga of mesmeric phenomena. Even so, and even if he retired, the continuing impact of mesmerism was itself phenomenal. It is fair enough to say that any written account which might do justice to him and to the remarkable phenomena of mesmerism must necessarily fill a number of volumes. In the 20th century, something along these lines was attempted by the redoubtable Eric John Dingwall, Ph.D., a director of the Department of Psychical Phenomena at the American Society for Psychical Research, 1921 to 1922, and research officer at the Society for Psychical Research from 1922 to 1927. For many years, Dingwall collected papers published between 1800 and 1900 regarding mesmeric research and phenomena in France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Germany, Scandinavia, Russia, Poland, Italy, Spain, Portugal, Latin America, the United States, and the Great Britain. He ultimately edited these papers into 4 volumes, which he published in 1967-1968. As he described via a masterful understatement, accounts of alleged paranormal phenomena occurring in the mesmeric and hypnotic states have been omitted by most writers on hypnotism, and details, generally speaking, of this aspect have not so far been published. The aim of the 4 volumes, therefore, is to raise the curtain on the almost unknown and forgotten activities of the mesmerists of the 19th century, while concentrating on the paranormal aspects of their work. Dingwall gave the 4 volumes the general and quite misleading title of Abnormal Hypnotic Phenomena, a survey of 19th century cases. Dingwall appears to have been either somewhat ironic or politically cagey, since, as he well understood, mesmeric and hypnotic phenomena were never quite synonymous. As it was, hypnotic phenomena were scientifically acceptable just so. In any event, Dingwall's 4 volumes give some idea of the enormous extent of the saga of Anton Mesmer and of the global scope of mesmeric phenomena encountered and documented by his successors, all of which by the 1920 had outrageously been caused to vanish into the modernist landfill of the unscientific. The mesmeric phenomena, as so called, were not really to re-emerge until the Soviet bioenergetic research referred to earlier and the Chinese chi-energetic research of the 1980s, 1990s, still to be referred to later on. That concludes chapter 6